I think a number of reasons. The markets had declined and eventually sort of collapsed around that time, around the early 1920s. Political reasons and other sources of supply and various reasons externally. And then the proprietors by that time had become old. And I mean, you'd wonder, well, it could have been sold, somebody else could have run it, but I suspect that was one of the things. And then sawmills everywhere, they'd had their heyday, and that industry just declined and was gone. And partly it may have had to do with supply too, because it's not an infinite resource, as we know today. If you keep on cutting, you eventually get into smaller and smaller things, and then eventually you're into cutting very small trees, and the pulp industry came later.
Do you have any interesting stories about the homestead or the mill?
Well, you might be interested in the story about one of the schooners that was built here, the Daisy Queen, was setting forth for Portland, Maine. And it had a cargo of lumber and whatever. And on board was the captain, my grandfather, who was 21 years old at the time, and Mr. Mel Jones, a local man, and Mr. Thorne, and I don't know whether there was anyone else, whether there was a deckhand as well, I'm not sure. But anyway, those people were on board, and they set forth from Cambridge and went down the river and so on, and it was in September, October, and the equinoctial gales happened then, and they got caught in one of these terrific storms. And the ship went aground at Cape Porpoise, which is off Portland. And I guess it was a sandbar, so that wouldn't have been quite so bad as if it were rocks, but the ship was wrecked. And later, I believe they did salvage some of the cargo, but it was quite a dangerous situation for them. And the story is that my grandfather got off and took the flag and wrapped it around himself and walked ashore with this flag. And that was about the only thing that was saved. And the flag and the story are at King's Landing. They have it in their collection and has been retold a number of times. And there's also at King's Landing a replica of these schooners, these wood boats. They were a two-masted schooner built for maximum cargo. They were very wide, and I don't know how seaworthy, but apparently so. And they were called the workhorses of the St. John River because they were, I don't know whether it was a unique design here. I suspect it was. But that must have been quite a severe thing. They went to the Portland Port Authority and they looked after them and gave them accommodation. And I have the various papers that were that accompanied all the things, the negotiations, because it was international, you see. And I have the letter, which is very poignant, that my grandfather wrote to his father, who was the owner. And it was kind of, it made me think of, Dad, I wrecked the car. But it wasn't, it was really quite serious and very formal, a dear sir. And what happened, the terrible gale, and that it was a terrible experience, and that they were lucky to escape with their lives. And I think that's probably the truth of it. It was written up in the American papers, and I have some of the clippings of that, and of course in the St. John paper. But they all survived, and all was well. It must have been a financial loss. I'm not sure about insurance in those days.
This concludes my interview with Robena Weatherby. Thank you for this opportunity, a Legacy in History project.